There is a road crossing in Australia where more than 120 saltwater crocodiles wait in a 2-kilometer stretch of water for your car to slip off the concrete. A military testing zone the size of England, where even the highway gets shut down without warning. A town so toxic the government demolished every building, cut the power lines, and erased it from official maps. These are 20 places in Australia even the police avoid. Number 20. Karnak Island. 10 kilometers off the coast of Fremantle in Western Australia, sits a 19-hectare limestone island that looks like paradise from a boat. White sand, turquoise water, sea lions basking in the shallows. But the interior of Karnak Island is off limits, and the reason is crawling through the scrub at a density of roughly 1 every 25 square meters. Over 400 tiger snakes live on this tiny island. Tiger snakes are the 5th most venomous snake on the planet. An untreated bite can kill a human in under 30 minutes. What makes the Karnak population stranger is that the snakes here have hyper-adapted. They are up to twice as heavy and 15% longer than their mainland counterparts, despite having no permanent freshwater source. Many of the adult males are blind, their eyes destroyed by nesting gulls attacking them as they hunt chicks. It does not slow them down. Snakes do not need eyes to strike. How the snakes got there is debated. One theory involves a snake showman named Rocky Vane, who allegedly released tiger snakes on the island around 1903, after both his wife and business partner were fatally bitten by his collection. Visitors can anchor offshore, but stepping beyond the beach is prohibited. The snakes rule the interior. Number 19. Coober Pedy. Drive 846 kilometers north of Adelaide on the Stuart Highway and you will reach a town where the surface temperature regularly exceeds 40 degrees Celsius and most of the population lives underground. Coober Pedy is the opal capital of the world. It produces over 70% of the planet's gem-quality opals. But the thing nobody warns you about until you arrive is the holes. Over 250,000 mine shafts have been dug in and around the town since opal was first discovered here in 1915 by a teenager named Willie Hutchison. Most of those shafts are unmarked. Signs around Coober Pedy warn visitors not to walk backwards and not to run. The ground beneath your feet might be solid sandstone, or it might be a thin crust over a vertical shaft dropping 10 meters into darkness. Animals fall in regularly. Tourists have fallen in too. The town's drive-in cinema requests that patrons leave their explosives at home. That is not a joke. Active mining continues throughout the town, and residents use gelignite as casually as other Australians use lawnmowers. About 1,700 people live here full-time, from over 45 nationalities, many in underground dugouts, where the temperature stays at a constant 23 degrees year-round. There are underground churches, underground hotels, and an underground bookshop. The landscape above ground looks like Mars. Mel Gibson filmed Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome here in 1985, and barely needed to build a set. Number 18. The Gun Barrel Highway. The Gun Barrel Highway stretches 1,350 kilometers through some of the most remote desert on Earth, connecting Carnegie Station in central Western Australia to Ulara near Uluru. It was built in 1958 by surveyor Len Beadell, who wanted his roads as straight as a gun barrel. Some sections have not been graded since the day they were first cut. At its most isolated point, the nearest hospital is 294 kilometers away. The nearest mechanic is 449 kilometers away. The nearest fuel is 211 kilometers away. If your vehicle breaks down on the gun barrel in summer, the temperature outside will be approaching 50 degrees. There is no mobile phone reception. There is no passing traffic. You may not see another vehicle for days. The road itself is punishing. Corrugations, sand drifts, washaways and rocky sections demand a high-clearance four-wheel drive and an experienced desert driver. Sections cross Aboriginal land and require transit permits. Other sections are permanently closed to the public. The longest gap between fuel stations is 489 kilometers, from Warburton to Carnegie Station. If you run out of fuel in that gap, you are walking through the Gibson Desert. The recommended travel window is May to September. From October to April, the heat alone can kill you. People have died out here because they underestimated the distance between nothing and nothing. Number 17. Tennant Creek. Roughly halfway between Alice Springs and Darwin, 500 kilometers from either, sits a town of 3,000 people with one of the highest per capita crime rates in Australia. Tennant Creek is the hub of the Barkly Tableland, a region roughly the size of the United Kingdom. In 2017, the estimated homicide rate in Tennant Creek was 59.6 per 100,000 people. That is more than 11 times the rate of the United States as a whole. In 2022 and 2023 combined, there were 2,261 crimes reported in this town of 3,000. Assaults, break-ins, domestic violence, and alcohol-fueled disorder dominate the statistics. In June 2026, police responded to a large-scale disturbance at a town camp involving between 80 and 100 people fighting with spears, clubs, boomerangs, crossbows, axes, star pickets, and knives. 3 vehicles were set on fire. A 44-year-old man was hospitalized with serious injuries. Police seized a large cache of weapons. The violence was linked to an ongoing feud between families from outlying communities. The town has a permanent police presence, but the sheer scale and frequency of incidents stretches resources beyond capacity. Liquor restrictions and curfew measures have had some effect. Alcohol-related assaults dropped 28% after one set of restrictions. But the underlying issues run deep. Driving through at night, you might not stop at all. Number 16, the Tanami Road. Stretching from Alice Springs to Halls Creek in the Kimberley, the Tanami Road crosses over 1,000 kilometers of desert that defined the word desolate long before English speakers arrived. At its most isolated, you are 235 kilometers from a hospital, 300 kilometers from a mechanic, and 243 kilometers from fuel. The road is largely unsealed. Corrugations shake vehicles apart. Bull dust hides deep holes that can swallow a wheel in an instant. There is one fuel stop along the entire route at the Tilmouth Well Roadhouse, and if it is closed, you are on your own. Cattle and kangaroos on the road at dusk have caused fatal collisions. Triple road trains up to 50 meters long share the narrow track and will not yield. The Tanami Desert is home to some of Australia's most venomous snakes and summer temperatures that routinely exceed 45 degrees. If you break down here, rescue might take days. Some of those rescues arrive too late. This is one of the great outback adventure drives, but it demands absolute self-sufficiency. Everything you need to survive must be in the vehicle before you leave. Number 15, Cahill's Crossing. Inside Kakadu National Park in the Northern Territory, a narrow concrete causeway crosses the East Alligator River. It is the only road access between Kakadu and Arnhem Land. It is also the most dangerous river crossing in Australia. More than 120 saltwater crocodiles live within 2 kilometers of the causeway. At high tide, water rushes over the concrete, and those crocodiles position themselves downstream, mouths open, waiting for fish swept over the weir. The tide can rise up to 8 meters, pushed inland from the Van Diemen Gulf 100 kilometers downstream. When the water is flowing across the crossing, it is powerful enough to sweep a 4-wheel drive off the concrete and into the river. There are videos of exactly this happening. Every car washed off the crossing lands in water filled with saltwater crocodiles, some exceeding 5 meters in length. Multiple people have died here: fishermen, photographers, children, backpackers. One man was taken by a crocodile in front of witnesses who watched helplessly as the animal performed a death roll. The crossing is only safe at low tide during the dry season. During the wet season, it is closed entirely. Crocodile expert Graham Webb has said that for every crocodile you can see, there are 10 others you cannot. Viewing platforms now, let tourists watch from above. Walking to the water's edge is something only someone who does not understand crocodiles would do. Number 14, Heard Island. 4,000 kilometers southwest of Perth, roughly halfway between Australia and Antarctica, sits an island most Australians have never heard of. Heard Island is Australian territory. It contains Australia's only active volcano, Big Ben, which stands 2,745 meters tall and has been erupting near continuously since 2012. The island is uninhabited. It has no infrastructure. Wind gusts have been recorded at 209 kilometers per hour. Temperatures rarely exceed 5 degrees. It rains or snows on 300 days per year. 14 glaciers cover 70% of the surface. Getting there requires a 2-week voyage across some of the roughest ocean on the planet. Access requires a government permit granted only for approved scientific research. No tourists are allowed. The last extended scientific visit was in 2016. Only 3 parties have ever reached the summit of Big Ben. Heard Island is one of the most remote places on Earth, and Australia's government intends to keep it that way. Number 13. The Canning Stock Route. running 1,850 kilometers through the Gibson, Little Sandy, and Great Sandy deserts of Western Australia. The Canning Stock Route is one of the most remote tracks on the planet. It was surveyed in 1906 by Alfred Canning to drive cattle from the Kimberley to the goldfields. 51 wells were sunk along the route to keep cattle alive. Many of those wells are now collapsed or dry. There are no settlements along the Canning Stock Route, no fuel stops, no mobile reception, no emergency services within hundreds of kilometers. Temperatures in summer exceed 50 degrees. The track crosses massive sand dunes that demand constant deflation and reinflation of tires, expert navigation, and a minimum of 2 vehicles traveling together. Travelers carry everything they need for the entire journey, which takes a minimum of 2 weeks. If something goes wrong in the middle of the Canning Stock Route, you activate a satellite beacon and hope someone can reach you before the desert does. The route passes through Aboriginal land, requiring permits from multiple land councils. It is generally only open from April to October. Flash floods, sandstorms, and mechanical failure have all stranded travelers. Search and rescue operations out here cost tens of thousands of dollars and sometimes take days. The Canning Stock Route is not a road trip. It is an expedition. Number 12. Pine Gap. 18 kilometers southwest of Alice Springs, in a natural depression called Pine Valley, sits a cluster of 45 white radomes that house satellite dishes in constant communication with orbiting spacecraft. Pine Gap is the Joint Defense Facility Pine Gap, jointly operated by Australia and the United States. It is one of the most secretive military installations in the Western world. Access is strictly prohibited. Anyone attempting to enter will be arrested. The facility is jointly run by the Australian Defence Force, the CIA, the NSA, and the U.S. National Reconnaissance Office. It plays a critical role in signals intelligence, missile detection, and drone coordination across the Asia-Pacific and Middle East. Pine Gap began operations in 1970 when 400 American families moved to Central Australia. For decades, even the Australian Prime Minister was not fully briefed on what happened inside. In 2006, 6 activists who tried to sneak in were arrested. In 2024, 3 Australian YouTubers were detained after attempting to enter through the front gate as a prank. The airspace above is restricted. The perimeter is monitored constantly. There are reportedly rooms inside that even Australian personnel cannot access. For the approximately 1,000 personnel who work there, what happens inside Pine Gap stays inside Pine Gap. Number 11. Alice Springs. Alice Springs sits almost exactly in the geographic center of Australia, 1,500 kilometers from the nearest major city in any direction. It has a population of around 26,000 and a crime rate that has made international headlines. In mid-2024, Alice Springs was ranked the 18th most dangerous city in the world, with a crime index of 72.1. For the year ending November 2025, the town recorded 37,955 offenses per 100,000 residents, a rate several times the national average. That is technically a higher crime rate than Bogota, Sao Paulo, or Damascus. Assaults, break-ins, vehicle theft, and alcohol-related violence dominate the statistics. In 2023, the Australian Prime Minister flew to Alice Springs to announce emergency funding for police operations, health infrastructure, and Indigenous housing. The situation had deteriorated to the point where a national leader felt the need to personally intervene. Youth crime is a particular concern. Groups of young people, some as young as 10, have been involved in car theft, break-ins, and assaults. Residents report not feeling safe after dark. Alcohol restrictions were imposed and had a measurable effect, reducing alcohol-related assaults by 43%. Between December 2024 and December 2025, total offenses fell 43% and house break-ins dropped 79%. The trend is encouraging, but the raw numbers remain high enough that Alice Springs keeps its unwanted title as Australia's most crime-affected town. If you're enjoying the video so far, then make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Number 10. Arnhem Land. In the far northeastern corner of the Northern Territory lies a tract of land larger than Switzerland that most Australians will never visit. Arnhem Land covers roughly 97,000 square kilometers of coastline, floodplains, escarpments, rainforest, and savanna. It is Aboriginal-owned land home to around 16,000 people, mostly Yolngu, who live in small outstations. Entering without a permit is a criminal offense, carrying fines up to $11,000. Random permit checks are conducted by police and local rangers. Even with a permit, vast sections of Arnhem Land are completely inaccessible, particularly during the wet season from November to April when roads become impassable. The Central Arnhem Road, the only land route into the region, is an unsealed track that demands a sturdy four-wheel drive and is not recommended for speeds above 80 kilometers per hour. Sacred sites throughout the region are subject to traditional restrictions. Some are gender restricted, some are entirely off limits to outsiders under any circumstances. Every waterway is crocodile habitat. The region is also home to some of Australia's finest ancient rock art, dating back tens of thousands of years. The didgeridoo was invented here, but Arnhem Land exists on its own terms. It is not a tourist destination, it is someone else's home, and they decide who enters. Number 9. The Woomera Prohibited Area. In the northwest pastoral region of South Australia, 450 kilometers from Adelaide, the Australian government has fenced off an area of desert roughly the size of England. The Woomera Prohibited Area covers 122,188 square kilometers of arid land used for weapons testing, missile trials, and defense research. It is the largest land-based military testing range in the world. The Stuart Highway passes through the prohibited area, but travelers cannot deviate from the road. From time to time, the highway itself is closed by roadblocks to allow weapons testing, sometimes for hours. The area was declared prohibited in 1947 as part of a joint British-Australian weapons project. At its peak, Woomera had the second highest number of rocket launches in the world, behind only Cape Canaveral. The range is divided into access zones. The red zone is permanently restricted. Parts of the amber zone require evacuation during testing periods. Unexploded ordnance from decades of weapons trials litters the landscape. Rockets, projectiles, and artillery rounds can be seen from the few tracks that cross the zone. Touching them is not advised. They are live. 6 Aboriginal groups hold native title over portions of the land and maintain deep cultural connections to country they can only access intermittently, depending on the military's testing schedule. Number 8. Maralinga. 800 kilometers northwest of Adelaide, in a stretch of desert that the Maralinga Charrucha people had called home for millennia, the British government detonated 7 nuclear bombs between 1956 and 1963. The Australian government gave permission. The traditional owners were not consulted. Yields ranged from 1 to 27 kilotons. Mushroom clouds reached 47,000 feet. Radioactive fallout was detected as far away as Townsville, 3,000 kilometers to the northeast. But the bombs were not the worst of it. Over 600 minor trials dispersed more than 22 kilograms of plutonium across the test site. Plutonium has a half-life of 24,100 years. Soldiers were ordered to walk through contaminated areas days after detonations. Aboriginal families who had not been evacuated witnessed the blasts from kilometers away. A radioactive cloud known as the Black Mist rolled across the landscape. Elder Yami Lester described how everyone became sick. Some of the older people died. The nearest clinic was 400 miles away. In 1984, Australian scientists discovered that major plutonium contamination remained, despite British claims of adequate cleanup. A 2021 study found that radioactive particles in the soil are slowly leaking plutonium into the environment. In 2009, the land was returned to the Maralinga Charrucha people, but 120 square kilometers around the Taranaki test site remain restricted for permanent habitation. The ground will be dangerous for longer than human civilization has existed. Number 7. Townsville. Townsville is not a remote outback settlement. It is a coastal city in northern Queensland, with a population of over 180,000, a water park, an aquarium, and a sea turtle hospital. It is also one of the most dangerous places in Australia. In a recent year, Townsville recorded over 31,000 crimes, including 3,000 break-ins, 6,100 drug offenses, and 1,829 assaults. Youth gang activity drives a significant proportion of the crime. Car theft is rampant. Property crime rates are among the highest in the country. Residents have staged protests over the crime rate on a regular basis. Locals report that walking at night in outer suburbs and around public transport hubs is genuinely unsafe. The crimes are not subtle. Groups of young people, sometimes armed, target homes, vehicles, and individuals with a brazenness that has shocked even law enforcement. Police arrest the same young offenders repeatedly, only to see them released and reoffend. What makes Townsville particularly confronting is the contrast. This is a city with genuine natural beauty, a gateway to the Great Barrier Reef, home to a major military base and a university. It is not a place you would expect to feel unsafe. And yet for many residents, locking up and staying alert has become the default. Number 6. The Nullarbor Plain. The air highway crosses the Nullarbor Plain between Western Australia and South Australia, passing through what is arguably the most featureless landscape on Earth. The name comes from the Latin nulla arbor, meaning no trees. One stretch of the highway runs dead straight for 146.6 kilometers without a single bend. The nearest hospital can be over 200 kilometers away. The nearest mechanic even further. Summer temperatures exceed 45 degrees. The Nullarbor sits on the world's largest single exposure of limestone, and beneath it lies one of the largest networks of underwater caves on the planet. The cliffs along the southern edge drop vertically into the Southern Ocean. Driver fatigue is the biggest killer on the air highway. The monotony induces a kind of highway hypnosis that has claimed lives for decades. Kangaroos, wombats, and camels on the road at night create constant hazards. Fuel stops are spaced far apart and occasionally close without notice. Mobile phone reception is virtually non-existent. A breakdown in summer without adequate water is a life-threatening emergency. Thousands of Australians drive the Nullarbor every year, treating it as a rite of passage. The ones who make it safely are the ones who respected the distance. The Nullarbor does not care about your schedule. Number 5. Rockhampton. Rockhampton is the oldest city in northern Queensland, with a population of just under 80,000 and a crime index of 67.2, one of the highest in the country. Its crime rate of 132 offenses per 1,000 people puts it at the top of national rankings for theft, burglary, and assault. Drug-related crime is endemic. Youth gangs operate in public areas with a level of confidence that unsettles both residents and visitors. Domestic violence statistics are among the worst in Queensland. The city sits on the Tropic of Capricorn, 600 kilometers north of Brisbane, and functions as the beef capital of Australia, with more cattle than people in the surrounding region. But behind the agricultural identity, Rockhampton struggles with entrenched disadvantage. Lower-income neighborhoods experience disproportionate rates of property crime and violent offenses. Police resources are stretched. Community frustration is high. The city has invested in diversionary programs and increased patrols, but the numbers have been stubbornly resistant to improvement. Per capita, Rockhampton is statistically one of the most dangerous places to live in a country that is otherwise one of the safest in the world. That contrast is what catches people off guard. Number 4. Cairns After Dark. Cairns is the gateway to the Great Barrier Reef. Over 2 million tourists visit every year to snorkel, dive, and explore the Daintree rainforest. During the day, it is a picture postcard. After dark, it becomes something else. Cairns has one of the highest assault rates in Queensland. Drug offenses are rising. Street-level robberies have increased. Alcohol-fueled violence in the nightlife districts is a persistent problem. In one recent period, over 18,200 crimes were reported in Cairns. Break-ins, muggings, car theft, and vandalism dominate the statistics. In March 2023, a police officer was attacked while giving a report on a crime. Homelessness is visible throughout the city center and contributes to a sense of unease, particularly at night. But there is another danger in Cairns that has nothing to do with crime. The waters off the coast are home to both saltwater crocodiles and box jellyfish, one of the most venomous creatures on Earth. Stinger season runs from November to April. Crocodile traps are set along the Cairns Esplanade. In far north Queensland, the line between the natural world and the urban world is thinner than anywhere else in Australia. Cairns is beautiful. It is also a place that demands vigilance in every direction. Number 3. The Kimberley Coast. The Kimberley coastline in far northwestern Australia stretches for over 12,000 kilometers of largely uninhabited tidal flats, mangrove forests, and sandstone cliffs. It is one of the most remote coastlines on the planet. The tides here are among the most extreme in the world, with a range of up to 12 meters in some areas. That tidal range creates powerful currents that can trap or drown even experienced boaters. The estuaries and river mouths are dense with saltwater crocodiles. The Kimberley has one of the highest concentrations of large saltwater crocs in Australia. Boats have been attacked. People have been taken from riverbanks. The nearest hospital to many points along the Kimberley coast is a helicopter flight away, assuming you can get a signal to call one. The coast is also home to the highly venomous Irukandji jellyfish and sea snakes. On land, king brown snakes and western brown snakes are common. The isolation is total. There are sections of the Kimberley coastline where no human being has set foot in living memory. The landscape is ancient, stunning, and completely indifferent to your survival. Organized expeditions carry satellite phones, medical kits, and crocodile awareness as standard. Going alone without preparation is not adventure. It is something closer to a death wish. Number 2. The Daintree River System. North of Cairns, the oldest rainforest on Earth meets the sea. The Daintree is 180 million years old, predating the Amazon by at least 100 million years. It is World Heritage listed, spectacularly beautiful, and home to one of the densest populations of saltwater crocodiles in Australia. The Daintree River and its surrounding waterways contain an estimated 80 to 100 crocodiles per navigable stretch. They live in the river, the creeks, the mangroves, and occasionally the ocean. They have been found on beaches, in car parks, and crossing roads. Signs throughout the region warn against swimming, fishing from riverbanks, or standing near the water's edge. Not everyone listens. In the waters off the Daintree coast, box jellyfish and Irukandji pose a lethal threat during stinger season. The cassowary, a large flightless bird with a dagger-like claw capable of disemboweling a human, lives in the rainforest. Venomous snakes, including the coastal taipan, inhabit the forest floor. The Daintree Crossing, a cable ferry connecting the northern and southern sections, operates across crocodile-infested water. Residents north of the river are cut off during the wet season when roads flood. The Daintree is a place of extraordinary beauty. It is also a place where the natural world has not been tamed, and the wildlife is not afraid of you. Number 1. Wittenoom. If you open an official Australian government map right now and search for Wittenoom, Western Australia, you will not find it. The town has been erased, its name removed from road signs, its buildings demolished, its power lines cut, its roads blocked, entry is prohibited and can result in prosecution. Wittenoom is not abandoned because people left. It is abandoned because it kills people. Between 1943 and 1966, the town was home to Australia's only blue asbestos mine. Blue asbestos, crocodile-lite, is the most lethal form of the mineral. Its fibers are thinner than a human hair. Once inhaled, they lodge permanently in lung tissue and cause mesothelioma, an aggressive and incurable cancer, often decades after exposure. 20,000 people lived or worked in Wittenoom during its operational years. The streets were paved with asbestos tailings. Children played in the blue dust. Some chewed it like gum. Workers came home coated in it. The company that ran the mine, a subsidiary of CSR Limited, knew the health risks. Internal documents revealed that executives prioritized production over worker safety. Over 2,000 former residents and mine workers have died from asbestos-related diseases. The death toll is still rising. The Western Australian government has called Wittenoom the greatest occupational health and safety tragedy in Australia and compared it to Chernobyl. The contaminated site covers 46,000 hectares. 3 million tons of asbestos tailings remain. The cleanup would cost billions. It has never been done. In 2022, the Wittenoom closure bill gave the government authority to demolish the remaining properties. The town's last resident, 80-year-old Lorraine Thomas, was the final person to leave. Despite every warning, tourists continued to visit, posting photos on social media. A single breath of the wrong air can trigger a disease that will not reveal itself for 30 years. Wittenoom is the one place in Australia where the danger is invisible, permanent, and patient. The town is gone. The dust is not. If you liked this video, make sure to comment what Australian location you would never visit, and watch this next video.